You are on to our favorite program, Democracy and Rule of Law. We are going to look at our second topic, that the Rivers State Electoral Commission conducted local government election yesterday in Rivers State. And prior to yesterday, some people have gone to court to challenge the proposed election date, contending that the 90 days notice required by law was not given, and seeking for injunctive reliefs or orders from the court to stop the election from being conducted. But notwithstanding the pending matters in court, the election has come and gone. Now, what is your view on this vis-a-vis the principle of law that when a matter is pending in court, the parties are expected to hold actions, to stay action in respect of the subject matter of that litigation, even though an order of court had not been granted by any court?
Thank you very much. I think, well, let me first of all start by saying that the situation in Rivers State, as we have seen over the year or the years, have been a cocktail of illegality and unconstitutionality. Even up till now, one wonders why that man is still there as sole administrator of that state. If there is no proper governor, an elected governor in place in that state, that is the first level of the perfidy and total dismembership of the constitution. It is a total utter disrespect for the rule of law, for democracy, for all that is sensible in any society, that an elected executive, an elected governor of a state is removed unceremoniously and in a procedure that is totally and absolutely illegal, and he has not been reinstated despite all the hues and cries of the people. It's really unfortunate. And of course, one will look at it. If there is no governor in that state, you have an elected democracy, then obviously any kind of thing can be tolerated, because till today Nigerians have tolerated the situation. Even the river people are tolerating the situation in their state, because nobody wants to challenge the federal government. But looking at the law itself, what is happening now in a democracy is an aberration. It's only in a military government that you hear of sole administrator, only by decrees. And for you to have a sole administrator in a state for this length of period without any plan to restate the elected governor of that state, I think all those who are running the affairs of that state and all the appropriation of funds to that state during the time of this sole administrator should be a subject of litigation, in fact a criminal process after that man leaves that office, notwithstanding that he was put there by the president. Now that's the first level of what I want to say about that state.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that what is going on now is a follow-up to that. What is happening with the local government election in that state is a follow-up, because if you don't have a democratically elected governor in place, of course there's no how you have a democratically elected governor in the local government. And if we are to go by the argument of the federal government that there was a state of emergency in that state that warranted the removal of the governor, one would have expected then that they should have waited for the decision of the court before proceeding to conduct an election in that same place. Because if there is a state of emergency, obviously, then it follows that you should not be conducting election in that place pending the time that state of emergency can be vacated.
Well, but
so what I'm saying in essence,
that the president does not have the powers to remove an elected governor. He may declare state of emergency.
Yes, he doesn't have not the removal of the governor, not the removal of the legislature in that state,
or the deputy governor, or the legislatures in that state.
He doesn't have that power.
Now that that happened, and the governor is yet to resume his duties, the legislators are yet to resume their duties. Now, in Rivers State, is that state being controlled and governed in accordance with the Constitution?
No, obviously not.
Or what laws do we say are prevalent in Rivers State?
We don't even know whether it's martial law that is operating in Rivers State. Because before you can declare a state of emergency, there must be imminent threat to the peace and security of that state. There must be a state of the breakdown of law and order in a state before you can be talking about state of emergency. And if there is no breakdown of law and order, and you are able to conduct an election, even though local government election, does that not tell you that the state of emergency in that state is an unlawful emergency?
It tells you say it was politically motivated.
Obviously, do we need to go far? Do we need a soothsayer to tell us that it is? If they can go ahead, despite the case in court, to conduct local government election in a state that is under emergency rule, well, then it tells us a lot.
In Nigerians, I believe that was the issue of political godfather or political godson.
It doesn't matter whatever issue,
you know,
that is at play.
Led to what has happened.
That's not an emergency
in Rivers State.
That's not an emergency.
Presently, even the governor we learned did not participate in the local government election. He stayed away from it, and because they don't believe that what was being done in accordance.
Obviously, not in accordance with the law or the Constitution.
And then looking at it from that angle, and then having also the sole administrator being aware, having noticed that there's a case pending in court, restraining him or the Rivers State INEC from conducting the local government election. They proceeded ahead to go ahead and conduct the election. Don't you think that that is a violation of the principle of law, that once a matter is pending in court, that the party against whom injunctive order is sought is restrained from taking any step until that court has had the opportunity of taking that application?
Yes, first of all, I want to say that what is happening is utter disrespect for the laws of this country and the Constitution of Nigeria. That's what they are just stepping on the Constitution. We are trampling upon the Constitution of the country, because the Constitution is very clear. And when you play politics to the extent that law becomes irrelevant, then what you are having is anarchy. It's a state of anarchy. It's not democracy, because democracy is about the people. Now, what we used to know, just like we have said, what we used to know as lawyers is that once you are served with an application asking for an injunctive relief,
yes,
whether or not an order has been made in respect of it, all parties are supposed to hold their shield,
yeah,
until the court makes a determination about the situation. And the reason why that has been established is to maintain judicial order, to maintain peace, and to ensure that the rule of law, rather than the rule of chaos or anarchy, or the rule of the thumb, or the rule of one man, or the rule of force, takes over society. So that the court is given the opportunity to adjudicate over the issue and to assign right based on the evidence presented before it. But what we have had in recent time is that politicians seem to now have this utter disrespect or disregard for law, for court, for judicial process, for truth, for justice. It's as if politics is now elevated beyond justice, beyond the law, that people just think they can do things without regards to the law, without regards to justice, without regards to even the court. Once you have submitted a matter to a court, you should wait for the determination of the court before either of the party can take laws into their hands or take to self-help. What we are having now is a perfidy that is completely outside the rule of law, completely outside democracy. And I think those who are doing it, they know why they are doing it.
And I can tell you think that
the reason why they are doing it is that there's an attempt to install a local government system by the government to ensure that the people they want get into office. So that even if by the time of course you remember that there have been that agitation over the local government system in Rivers State. Who controls the local government system? Who controls the legislature? Who controls the executive?
Yes.
By all the political parties. So a political party is trying to muzzle all other political parties to ensure that they modulate that election, that local government election, in such a way that their candidate can emerge, and then they can hold on to the machinery of the state, the political machinery of the state, maybe for 2027. And that is very terrible for our democracy, because you are doing it in a situation where you still say there is an emergency. The state of emergency, you are now acting under a state of emergency to elect people into offices under emergency. To me, it sounds strange. If in fact there is an emergency in that state, it obviously shows that there is no emergency in that same state.
Now, are you saying, in other words, that that there appears to be no level playing ground
Obviously,
as far as the
it's just one party show. It's just one party show. One party show. Because the man who is the sole administrator is going to modulate over the election.
Now, when we just oppose that position with the tenets of democracy and rule of law, what do you have to say to Nigerians?
It's an aberration. It's an aberration that should not be allowed. It's a perfidy that we are witnessing in the nation. And it's so terrible that we are getting worse and worse. And unfortunately, we don't want this politics, the kind of politics, the character of politics that we are playing in Nigeria, to turn this country into a banana republic. A state where the law is never applied, where the law is disregarded at will, where the rule of thumb becomes the rule of law, and where the rule of force and whoever controls the power system does whatever he likes without regards to the threshold and the limitations that the law are put in place. When we have laws in society, the essence of those laws is to regulate the use of power. Where you now have a situation where law can no longer regulate the use of power, the judiciary can no longer control the use of power, then we are descending into the state of nature that Rousseau says is nasty, brutish, and short. And we don't want Nigeria to get to that state of nature.
Do you think that the court that is settling that matter will have the courage to do what the judge in Ferguson and Daniels did? Because in Ferguson and Daniels, the defendant had information that he was to be served summons on Monday. As of Friday, got that information. And the matter had to do with a dispute over land ownership.
Yes.
And they proceeded to build.
Quickly erect building.
They were working day and night. Mm-hmm. And by Monday morning, when he was finally served, he told the court he had already completed. Yeah. And they just had to give order
that they should pull down the entire
building be pulled down.
Entire thing.
And that the motion for injunction be taken irrespective of who may get the ruling in his or her favor at the end of the day. Now, simply because they already had information that there was
going to be an order to restrain,
that there was notice of motion.
Yes.
Now, since in Rivers State, the sole administrator as well as the state electoral umpire were aware and were served with the processes of court, do you think the court will go ahead and set aside the election and declare same null and void in view of the pending matter before the court?
You see, what they have done is to face the court with what lawyers call fait accompli. That is a fruitlessness. The court is no longer in position to even do anything.
No, but the court can go ahead and
I'm coming somewhere. But the proper thing a court of law and justice should do is what we have just said. All those who committed that perfidy should be taken for contempt ordinarily. And the court can make an order to set aside or nullify that election that was conducted while the action was pending. Because once an action is pending, any act that is taken to thwart or to frustrate the process of the law is itself an illegality. And any court has a right to determine we saw it in the case of Ojukwu and the governor of Lagos State. Okay?
Yes.
Where the court came out on this kind of thing, or an injunction, and came down heavily on it. The court can order that election be set aside. And those who went ahead to conduct that election are guilty or liable for contempt of court. Because while the matter is still before the court, none of the parties ought to take steps that will frustrate whatever is the outcome of that judgment or that order of court, which is what they have done now. Is total impunity and a very ruthless and reckless disregard for the rule of law and for the judge, and an interference also with the administration of justice.
Yes, that reminds me of the Supreme Court decision in Bello against AG Oyo State.
Yes.
Where the appellant who was convicted and sentenced to death, his appeal was still pending, and the state, Oyo State,
and was
proceeded and executed him.
Yes,
and
before the appeal.
Yes, clearly condemned that act and, said that the state had been painted with the black paint of lawlessness. In other words, that the state did not allow the appeal of the appellant to be heard
on merit
before proceeding to execute him. So, in view of that judgment of Supreme Court and other cases, what do you think ought to be the way forward?
Well, I think you have said it. You have said it. All these line of cases that we are x-raying now are very clear on what should be the attitude of a judge. If I'm a judge and I'm sitting and the matter is before me and they go ahead to do their own thing, I will bring them back to that position. Okay? But unfortunately, whether we have judges who are bold enough to do that in Nigeria of today is another issue entirely.
Now, this one we are going to draw the curtain because our time is fast spent. But in maybe 30 seconds, what is your final word on the Osun State saga and then the Rivers State election into local government council just concluded? Yes,
the first thing I want to say is that this is a needless litigation that will not benefit the people of that state. And it's a publicity that the president doesn't need at this time. The president is fast becoming famous for this kind of disregard to law and order, which is very, very sad. I think the proper thing they should do is release the fund so that there can be peace and good governance in that state. Then on the second issue, dealing with the question of
Rivers State election conducted,
I think the judge should go ahead and set aside that election that was conducted while those actions were pending, because it is to frustrate the cause of justice.
Thank you very much.